everyone. Welcome back to our next episode here as we finalize our series. I am Lisette, and this is
Martina.
We are your hostess with the mostest for perspective. So welcome those that are new to our channel and haven't seen anything. We have been interviewing each other for the last few months. And here we're just going to close out with some pretty hard topics, I would say, and pretty heavy topics for us. So we're getting back to our perspective roots, what we started this channel with, and really want to continue on. As you probably have seen and heard through our interviews, if you had a chance to watch those, definitely white supremacy, racism, and things like that have really kind of shaped our experiences growing up as kids, as young adults, and now as adults, and continues to do so. So we want to explore that more and really more into what it means, not just for us, but I think just globally, as far as the impact in culture and how we navigate the world and how, systems work. So definitely digging into the divide that has been really created between Black and Brown communities and the role that white supremacy has had in that, and the role that really white people have, and as we continue to have in this. So that's really what we'll focus on and kind of talk through. And I think for me, and I'll kick it off, and then we can just start our conversation, Martina, is really, as I think back into our conversations and even our interviews, there is that divide between Black and Brown. If I think back to just the summer with here in Chicago and with the racial unrest and things like that, and how there was this real just, I guess, anger from the Brown community and the Black community, and really just wanting to keep them out of the communities, and just like, some violence that erupted and things like that. And it all, stems back from, anti-Blackness within the Brown community. But I think for me is, where did that anti-Blackness come from? Mm-hmm. And digging into that portion of it. But I'll kick it off to you and get your initial thoughts about this topic.
I love that you said anti-Blackness, because that's what it is. And, I don't know, I always wonder these things. That's why I need to do my research more. Like, who coins these terms? Is this some researcher sitting up somewhere in their ivory tower? Or is this like people on the street? Because I obviously have much more respect for the people on the street who's out here doing this. But I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer. But yeah, I think it is, because, we've been hearing more and more about this with everything going on this year, because 2020 has been a shit. And we've been hearing, this anti-Blackness word, and which I really hadn't really heard people call it that until this year, anti-Blackness. But that's really what it is. And I think examining where it comes from, obviously, first thing I'm gonna say, we got to go way, way back. Because as I've been saying jokingly, white people come from, what is it, the country of Caucasus? What is it? Caucasian people. So like that. How do we get that? And then like this group of people just don't like other groups of people. Like, yeah. Why? And it's just, to me, it's fascinating in the sense, you don't like somebody because the color of their skin, or, because we just finished on another video talking about, what it means to be Black for us and what we're so proud of. Like I said, I think everybody wants to be Black in some way. And I'll stand by that. I hope somebody comments on it, because I want to hear what people have to say. So comment, be nice about it, but I want to hear what people have to say. But it is like this anti-Blackness, like, I feel like it stems from like slavery, but even before that, because it's not just with, I mean, we say anti-Blackness, and yes, we're focusing on Black people and people who identify as Black, but obviously this love of whiteness and disliking everything else that's not white, so including being Latinx, so everybody, you know, but there are people who are of Latin heritage that probably identify as white because they look white. So that's a whole different, that's like a whole different topic. But the people who are colored, sure to say. So that's just so fascinating to me. And I think, as I said in the previous video as well, this anti-Blackness, like people want to appropriate a lot of our culture, whether it be food, music, fashion, or whatever, but they don't want to be Black. Like, you want to get the braids, you know, you want to date certain type of people, you want to get your lip injections, your butt injections, you want a smaller waist, like the Coke bottle waist, you know, like the Coke bottle body, a lot of people identify or would call it, but you don't want to be Black. But I think a lot of these people, I think especially, always fascinating that people who don't realize that. They just like, well, I'm just out here living my life. I'm not anti anything. I'm like, but just acknowledge where it comes from. And because, okay, I'm trying to talk about this without getting heated.
I mean, we can get heated.
But I feel myself getting heated because it's like, just, I've seen things, you know, just like I was talking to you about, you know, I want to do, a scarf for tomorrow. And I was like, you know, I've been seeing videos, white girls talking about doing scarves in their hair. Now, you know, it's, you know, it is what it is. But I'm like, that's not really your culture. And what I'm trying to say is like, a lot of this, people talking about anti-Blackness, is people who don't have culture. You've stolen culture from other groups of people. Yeah. Like, when you think about it, what is white culture? But what does that mean? Like, do we hear that? Do we hear white culture?
Land.
What did you say? Land?
Land.
Land. Girl, I was going to say some Sperry's or something, but I shouldn't say that. But what, I mean, because when you think, even like people who are maybe identify as ethnically white, like the Italians or the Greeks and things like that, they have culture. We ain't talking about them. Like, they have culture.
They have culture.
But the white people here in America,
the U.S.,
what is your culture? Like, what is that? And, you know, like I said, I'm not talking about people from other countries who are clearly white. They identify as white. Yeah. They have culture. But here, what do you like? I have no idea what white culture is. Yeah, we've done some videos talking about white oppression, white supremacy, code switching. So obviously it's something. It's this idea of white culture. Like, it's been identified as seem to be better than anything else, which creates the anti-Blackness.
It's something that I know I
got heated off of that one. Woo!
Sure did.
Heated.
And it's something that you and I have talked about and sort of just wrestle with, of understanding this anti-Blackness and where it comes from and the divide that it creates among primarily Black and Brown communities. And when you think back to this notion of in Mexico, which is I'm just learning very early history. Like, I've never really kind of dug into Mexican history and learning things and figuring out, like, you know, like, man, you know, the Spaniards came out here and just kind of made this idea that, you know, the lighter your skin, the better you are, right? And then the darker skin, which any indigenous person from Mexico was darker skin, just was like, oh no, you're like dirty and all these things. And it's like, what? Like, that the nonsense that is, you know, as now it's like, that's just nonsense, but that nonsense continues on and has lived on in Mexico and in other Latin American countries of that. And, you know, and it's, you know, it, to me, it just stems from that, like, you know, Europeans coming here, claiming this as their land, you know, and all of the Americas, when you think about the US and Mexico and South America, like, and claiming it as if people didn't live here. as if there weren't already people that had here culture and traditions and things like that. And as those, as when you think about like Mexico, and I'm no expert, so please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong in anything, because I am not a Mexican history expert. I'm not even a U.S. history expert. I mean,
It's really your perspective.
is my perspective. But you think about as slavery was brought into the fold because these Europeans brought diseases in to this country that killed people off, people escaped, and all these things. And it's like, so you had to create you had to oppress another group of people in order to build your so-called empires here in the US and in Latin America, things like that, but mostly in the US. And you brought these ideals of like, oh, if you're dark skin, you're nothing really, you're zero anything, and you have no ideas. And that prevalence of it that then stemmed worldwide, because anti-Blackness is a worldwide thing. Like, it's not just a United States problem anymore. It's something you hear primarily in the United States, but it's definitely something that lives across the globe. And it all started because these white males, someone down in history land decided to be like,
For Columbus, we was gonna say he one of them.
and it's like, we need to create this idea that we are superior, but y'all, like, that's just so crazy. And is like, how? And me, like, when it comes to Christianity and the idea of just that, and just the divide that white Christians have now created here, like, it's just like, I can't.
All kind of stuff around that in terms of too, like the religious factor in it. I've heard, now this is not a quote, but this is what I've heard. I've heard that the reason you don't see a lot of African Americans who are Catholic is because the Catholic Church didn't take a stand against slavery. Now, I don't know. But hey, you look at Louisiana, we got a bunch of Creoles and Cajuns, but it's a mix of different things there. And a lot of African American people in New Orleans and Louisiana, they are Catholic because that's predominant religion there. But I do think that would be interesting too, to look at, okay, that's like a whole nother segment, but if you look at like religion and like race,
Yeah.
that I think is quite fascinating. But I think, kind of getting back to it, I think the thing that seems to be is like the United States was founded on oppression. That's what it sounds. That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, that's what it is.
What it is, it's just a group of people who are white, who identified as white, just chose to oppress people. And that I guess because a lot of this, I don't think like that. I don't think in a way of like in the run of my day at work. Now, sometimes if you get on my nerves at work, trying to control people or control the situation. But that's instantly what this is. You want to control a group of people and presume that you're dominant over them. And if they don't do what you say, you kill them or rape their mothers, daughters, whatever. But why? Like, why? Like, I just think like, and I don't know in a sense, do people feel the need to behave this way because if they don't, they're going to get treated that way? Like, that's always so interesting to me. Like, how did we get to this spot where people need to feel like they need to oppress or control other people? For what? For their own pleasure? I don't know. That, to me, that's interesting.
It makes me think of something I saw. It might have been something in like TikTok or one of those IG or something, of like, why are white people afraid to become the minority? Mm-hmm. And is it because you've seen how minorities have been treated in this country that you're afraid to be the minority? And I'm like, that's so true, because when you've seen Black and brown people be treated as nothing and continue to be seen as those that perpetuate crimes, that are, taking advantage of government assistance, taking our jobs, like all these narratives that have been created around primarily Black and brown people here in the United States. You wouldn't want to be a Black or brown person in the United States. And it's like, and I think that also, in the mentality of a Black and brown person, wants you to associate more to white, because the closer you are to whiteness, the better chances you have of being treated better, of having more opportunity, everything that comes with white privilege, like with that, like your association versus the association of Black and brown. It's all negative, it's all like murky, and it's all like, oh no, like you don't want to be associated with that. And even I like have seen people through the spectrum of it, like I know I've seen it where it's like, oh no, like let's lean to this whiteness because it seems better.
And maybe that's the white culture, is that white privilege.
Yeah.
I'm just like, maybe that's what it is.
Because whether they acknowledge it or not, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It exists. And there's people that want to be like, oh my God, there's somebody said about minority privilege or something. I was like, I don't know what you thought. That is a made up.
I hope they're not talking about that fucking affirmative action. Like, I hope that's not what they're talking about, because I don't have time.
I didn't even have time. I didn't give it the time of day to even look at it or anything. But I think, it is that. I think it's a lot of it is this idea. And as we see in the current sort of climate that we're in, the fear of losing that privilege, the fear of having to confront it and having it taken away, drives people to do some very insane and awful things, to say and do awful things, do whatever they can, whether it's, having these white supremacist groups just coming out of in the open because they can, and it's accepted that they do. And it's like, man, you are so afraid of Black and brown and other groups of people to just move up into places of power, that you are just making it into some kind of war, into some kind of like.
I do think a lot of white people feel that if the Black or brown populations or Asians, whomever, I think they do fear if they get in the majority, the majority, that they might receive some of that hatred that they've imposed onto other people for centuries.
I don't even think it's majority. I think it's just getting into places of power, because for the most part, we are the majority. When you combine all groups, like we become the majority for the most part, but it's getting into places of power, I think, that scares white people that are in those places right now.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, because one thing you always say, like, there's enough space for everybody. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they see it like, they don't see it like, because I said, it's this idea you got to control people or oppress them so that way you can still be at the top. You can have more than one person at the top. It's okay.
But when you think about like what white people have done to Black and brown and other people of color in this country, like, yeah, you should be afraid, because it's like you've treated us so badly. I'm not saying people are gonna go up there and like create all these things against white people, but like that fear comes because you treated terribly, and you can't acknowledge that. I think that's the thing that I think drives me crazy as a person of color, is like you can't even acknowledge and accept the fact that you and your ancestors have done some terrible things in the name of trying to keep your power, in the name of religion, in the name of your white privilege, and all these things. You can't even acknowledge that, and you throw it under the rug and you say it doesn't exist, when it does. It is just your idea of it not existing is just, to me, is just ridiculous. But I'm like, the idea that if people of color get into power, like, oh my gosh, they're going to create all these things against us and like,
Mhm.
you know, have payback or something. And I'm like,
Most of us don't even care that much about
I
it.
was like, did Obama do that? Like, can you
Yeah,
show me the receipts of when Obama got into the highest place of power that he just like gave all the favoritism to black and brown folks? Like,
and they mad at him for that. They mad. Like, what are you mad at him about? Like, people mad because he's educated. People mad because he went to this school. People mad because he did this. But what are you mad about? Like, because it's like, I feel like Obama, you know, he can't win for losing. Like, it's gonna be something. Because if he would have came out and did things like that, people be pissed about that. But the fact that he didn't, they mad at that. Well, damn. What is it? Which one is it?
you gotta.
I told y'all I got heated. Like, I took off my sweater.
You did.
I got heated. Like, I'm over here posted up like this.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it just becomes, it continues to create a divide. And I think if we look into the divide that I think white people have created, like, I don't think they understand what they have done.
No, not the severity of it. I mean,
And how, and I think there's a lot more happening in trying to create, you know, black and brown unity in this country. I think in Chicago, there's a lot of desire to create that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have to dig through everything that white people have done and have created, and this, you know, this their success in anti-blackness, like that, and you have to dig through that, and you have to go through years and generations of anti-blackness within the brown community. And you even think about like colorism, right? And you think of colorism and how that even, you know, the association to more whiteness, and like have to dig through that. Like, there's so much that has to be done within even your own brown community and within your own black community before we can get here, all because white people created this system and this way of thinking that they don't, I think some people understand and some people know, and they just like wash their hands off of it. And there's others that just don't realize or don't understand, like, how is it white people's fault that black and brown communities can't work together or can't figure out how to really unify around certain policies or certain things that need to change. And I'm like, because of white supremacy. Like, that's it. Like, you all created these ideals and all these policies and all these systems that have just made us think that the closer we get to whiteness, the better it is. And anything that's a darker, you know, skin tone or anything that it could be associated with that, like, oh my gosh, we can't, you know, like, we can't be with that because we want the privilege that comes with just being associated with white. And it's heartbreaking, because I'm like, you and I have talked about like how if we could only figure out how to work together, we can just do this. Like, there's so many things that we can break down, so many systems, policies, and, you know, and things that we can change for the good in our communities. I mean, and Chicago is such a perfect example of where those boundaries are between black and brown communities. When you think of places like North Lawndale and South Lawndale, and it's like, y'all are Lawndale, like, you know, you could just be one, but there's North and South Lawndale, and you know which one is more brown and which is more black. And like these neighboring kind of communities and neighborhoods that if you all just work together a bit more, and it's not community leaders working more together, it's community members having more communication and bringing those spaces. But it's hard to dig through generations of white supremacy thoughts and ideals and these things that have just separated you from seeing, like, hey, my black neighbor is my ally. You know, we are in this together, and vice versa. Like, because white people have done a really good job of ensuring that we don't see each other as allies.
And I think in sense of the Black community, African American community, it even is not so much like within that group of people, but it's also you got Black men against Black women and vice versa. I don't know if it's the same for you and like being by being Mexican American, is it that sort of, the women against the men, but it is. And I think a lot of that has come out with everything that's happened with, around defunding the police and all that. And then you've seen a lot about, black men and women going back and forth with each other when we shouldn't be. And that's really frustrating to me because there are pros and cons on both sides. And it's just really frustrating to me. It's like, but I think it's also, I hope that it's making people see these sort of issues do exist. Because I don't know if everyone actually sees that. And, one thing, you'll hear in the I've heard, a Black woman is like the hardest working woman, and a lot, I'm planning an event next month that I will not be talking about on here because it's for work, but it's around, I guess I will talk about it in this sense. It's focusing on uplifting Black women. And because we don't see enough of that. And I don't know if you see enough about uplifting Mexican women or Mexican American women or uplifting Latino women just in general, and all of us coming together. And so that's what that event's going to focus on, because it's like, because even when you get into the gender, there are women against women, men against men. And so there's so much that this white supremacy culture has created. It's created a lot of division. I know for Black people, it has created division among the genders, among the sexes. And it is just, I'm like, y'all, we got to get it together. And I think that's so much easier said than done. And it just makes me think about, like, here in Chicago, like we're talking about Lawndale, South and North. And I'm like, that's another thing that we've talked about, this whole idea of neighborhoods. I'm like, people gotta, if we're gonna get anywhere, it's like you either gotta get your neighborhood involved in what's going on, or people gotta get over that concept of neighborhood. But people are so attached to neighborhoods here. And I feel like that holds the city back a lot of times because people stay in their bubbles, they don't leave, and then it creates these ideas that you may hear about other communities that may be predominantly Black or predominantly Asian, and you may start having these old concepts and constructs come back up. Oh, well, we don't want to go to that neighborhood because of this or that. But they might say the same thing about you, but why are we saying this about each other? Like, there's so much harmony and unity that's needed that we haven't gotten from this presidential administration. And we will not get it if the unfortunate thing happens a month from now. I think it is exactly a month. I think it is, tomorrow will be exactly a month until the election. But there's just so much work. And I think a lot of people thought, like, when Obama came into power, some of these things didn't exist. But obviously when Trump was elected, we obviously see these things haven't gone anywhere. And they haven't because people keep putting Band-Aids on it. And to me, it's just like, both you and I work in the nonprofit world. I feel like nonprofit was made for this, was made for these issues. And the thing is like, until we can get policies that actually change this, like, I just feel like we're just not going to get anywhere. We're just not. Like, we need another organization, another nonprofit to do this, to do that. Why can't you just change the policies? And don't tell me what you can't do, because you do it when you want to do it. So I'm just tired of another nonprofit trying to fix something that is bigger than them.
Yes.
It's bigger.
So we're gonna pause this segment. I think there's a lot more that we want to digest, but I also want to be mindful of the time. So we'll do a two-parter for this topic because I really think there's a lot more for us to dig into, and definitely the nonprofit one is one that I definitely think we can dig in more, and how that kind of influences the unification of our Black and Brown communities. So if there's anything that you all want to comment on, please do so. Share your thoughts. If you are a person of color, please let us know how, the division between our communities and our people, how that has impacted you, or how you see white supremacy, please comment and share your thoughts on this, because we definitely want to know what you all are thinking. And if you are a white person watching this, please let us know your questions, comments, things that you've seen. Maybe you're learning, maybe you didn't know about any of these things. And if you don't agree with them, let us know. I want to know why you don't agree. So thank you for watching. We will see you in the next part. But like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate you all sticking around with us. Till next time.
Bye.